Shalom. I hope that all of you are well. I have a bit of a conundrum. Do I keep making videos or do I let people just fall away? Because I see people who, after they see the issues in the New Testament, they throw out Jehovah and the Tanakh. And I understand that there are numerous issues in the Tanakh. But the testimony of Jehovah is sure. That's how I was brought out from underneath of the fisher of men. Jehovah revealed to me who he is and who Jesu is. And he did so when I humbled myself. I prayed and asked to see it through the Tanakh. Who are you going to follow? The one whose testimony is the deliverance of a people out of slavery, or the one whose testimony is that you will be beheaded for following him? The one whose testimony promises life for obedience, or the one whose testimony promises your murder for obedience? This is one of the problems in the New Testament, the Christianity theology. Let's say that a prisoner hears one of these prison ministries and converts and believes, now all my sins are covered. The murder of the innocent man that I committed is covered because I put my faith in the murder of the innocent man. Does he still have to pay for his crimes? You know, especially for you, those of you who claim to be Messianic, that you follow the Torah, right? In Genesis 9, what does it say? Whoso sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God he made man. And this is why in Exodus 23:7, right, it says, keep far from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous do not murder, for I will not justify the wicked. But this murderer believes that because he put his faith in the murder of an innocent man, that he is now justified as righteous. Well, partly in the reason Christianity teaches this is because Romans 4:5, right? Not to him who worketh is the reward not reckoned of grace, but of debt. So what he's saying here is if you work out what's righteous, it's a debt. But to him that does not work, so somebody who's doing no righteousness, but just believes on him that justifies the wicked. Let's read it, Exodus 23:7 again. I will not justify the wicked. And then Proverbs 17:15. He that justifies the wicked and he that condemneth the just, even both of them are an abomination to Jehovah. Paul is the abomination because he's justifying the wicked and condemning doing what's right, saying that if you do what's right, it's a debt. And going back to our example, right? The prisoner who converts. Does the Torah not apply to this person anymore? Do they still have to die in their sin? by man's life, his life has to be taken. And this is what I mean by the problems in Tanakh. David murdered the innocent man Uriah the Hittite. David committed adultery with that man's wife. Both of those sins have zero atonement, and David had knowledge. Many of us do not have knowledge, right? We commit sin before we have knowledge of good and evil, before we understand the Torah. David knew the Torah. He knew the punishments for his sin. And he's claimed to have a heart after Jehovah, yet he took a man's life because he wanted to cover up his sin. David is ultimately the perfect example of Christianity. That if you do wrong, all you have to do is believe, and your wrongs are covered up. There's no righteousness anymore. And this continues through his son Solomon, who wasn't the firstborn. The firstborn should have received the inheritance. King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, the Moabite, the Ammonite, the Edomite, the Sidonian, and the Hittite women, from the nations concerning which Jehovah had said to the sons of Israel, "You shall not go along with them, nor shall they go along with you, for they will surely turn your heart away after other gods." Solomon clung to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. Now it happened after a time that Solomon was old. His wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to Jehovah his God. What's funny is, like, the book of First Kings reveals that this is the state of Solomon from the beginning. In Chronicles, it alters the history to whitewash Solomon, and David is severely whitewashed in the Chronicles. You'll not find the murder of Uriah there, the adultery issue. The Chronicles was written after the return from exile, and they are severely whitewashing history. Then Solomon formed a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. That's against Torah. And took Pharaoh's daughter against Torah and brought her to the city of David until he completed building his own house and the house of Jehovah and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were still sacrificing on high places. David didn't take down the high places because these were in existence before Solomon became king. So David had violated Torah here because there was no house built for the name of Jehovah until those days. This is like the same sort of argument you see from the New Testament when Yeshua and his disciples are breaking Sabbath and picking the head of grain on the Sabbath. Remember, you're supposed to collect your food or anything else on the 6th day or before that. But here they are, still sacrificing in the high places, right? So it's okay, though, because there was no house built in the name of Jehovah in those days, right? But there's not even a house commanded to be built. It's a tabernacle. In fact, if you look at a certain passage in the Torah, at the end of the 10 Commandments, it says, "You shall make an altar of earth for me, not an altar of stone. You shall sacrifice on it your burnt offerings, your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to bless you. And if you make an altar of stone, you shall not build it of cut stones, like the temple. And if you wield your tool on it, you will profane it. And you shall not go up by steps to my altar." If you look at the description of his stone temple that's made from cut stone, it has steps going up to the altar. And this one, right, so that your nakedness not be exposed on it. And those of you who may know where I'm already going with that, whose nakedness was exposed before the glory of Jehovah. David returned to bless his household, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel has glorified himself today, just like, his sons continually do, including the New Testament one, that they steal Jehovah's glory. He uncovered himself today in the eyes of his servants and maids, as one of the worthless ones shamelessly uncovers himself." Now, how does David respond to this? Does he say, "I would never uncover myself before the servants, as that would violate Torah"? So David said to Michal, "It was before Jehovah." I mean, we just read Torah. The whole purpose of not going upstairs is so that your nakedness is not revealed before Jehovah. And here David is boasting to Michal that his nakedness was plainly before Jehovah, which violates Torah, who chose me above your father and above all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people before Jehovah, over Israel. Therefore I will celebrate before Jehovah. And it's very weird. When the Pharisees challenge him, what does he do? "Well, you do not remember when David ate the showbread?" Remember the murder example? Like, the prisoner comes to before the judge, and the judge says, "You took an innocent man's life, and by man your blood shall be shed, because you took an innocent man's life." And the murderer says, "Correct, but my sin is covered up by the murder of Jesu." Do you see the problem here? And Solomon loved Jehovah, walking in the statutes of his father David, which is just a bizarre statement with which was read, right? Except he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. So he was already breaking Torah. He's already double-minded. And the king went to Gibeon, and this is where the great high place is, not to Jehovah, but to other gods. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on the altar, and this is where Chronicles changes this history, that even though David brought the ark from Kerith Jearim, somehow it was also at the high place of Gibeon, and that's what Solomon sacrificed to. Even though it said, like it pretty clearly says, it shouldn't be a high place because then you'll have stairs. Right? In Gibeon, it says that Jehovah appeared to Solomon in a dream at night. And I believe this is the same sort of thing you have in the New Testament, right? Like wisdom from a dream, right? Great wisdom from Jehovah in a dream. If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, what does he do next? He gives them a sign or a wonder of his great wisdom, even though he's just sacrificed 1,000 bulls to a pagan god in Gibeon. Now let's go to another high place. "6 days later, Jesu brought him with Peter and James, and John his brother led them up to a high mountain by themselves. a high place. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun. His garments became white as light. And behold,